Today, you are going to see the 10 European actors who make 99% of Hollywood actors look absolutely ridiculous. These are the actors who refuse to just do theater, and instead began to act by baring their souls, their intensity, and their naturalness. After the ranking of the best American actors, many of you were left wanting more. But make no mistake, this ranking is not an inferior category, quite the opposite. In fact, the greatest actor in history is European. Mads Mikkelsen is the definition of magnetism. With an imposing physical presence and a gaze capable of chilling your blood or breaking your heart, this Dane possesses an animalistic technique. He is capable of holding a close-up for minutes without saying a word, transmitting a moral ambiguity that is equally unsettling and fascinating. He is the perfect balance between European elegance and raw physical force. We have seen him devour the screen in Hannibal, where he managed to make us not miss Hopkins. And in another round, he gave us an unforgettable human catharsis, demonstrating a mastery of the body and tragicomedy worthy of the greatest in history. But if there is one film that justifies his presence in this Olympus, it is undoubtedly The Hunt.
Kom nu, vil du sige noget til mig?
Hvad laver du, mand?
Vil du sige noget til mig?
Hold op, Lukas.
Vil du sige noget til mig? Hvad? Kom nu!
Hold op, Lukas!
Here he plays Lucas, a man whose life is pulverized by a childhood lie in a society that decides to socially execute him without proof. Mikkelsen's performance is, quite simply, devastating. He doesn't need shouting or grand gestures. The pain is chewed in his eyes, in the contained trembling of his jaw, and in that look of a beaten dog still trying to maintain its dignity. There is a scene in the church during Christmas Eve where Mads turns to look at his former best friend. It is a duel of stares that breaks the screen. In that instant, Mads personifies the purest helplessness of the human being. Thanks to this interpretation, he won the Best Actor award at Cannes and proved to the world that to move someone to their core, you don't need Hollywood. You only need a face capable of enduring the weight of a universal injustice. Javier Bardem is much more than the most international Spanish actor in history. He is a performer of brutal honesty, capable of transforming his body and his face to disappear completely into his characters. He possesses an imposing physical presence, a voice that rumbles with authority, and a sensitivity that allows him to travel from absolute psychopathy to the deepest vulnerability. In The Sea Inside, he moved us to tears playing Ramon Sampedro, a man who could only act with his eyes.
O me vas a tiborrar a somníferos como hacían en el hospital. Nadie va a impedir que salga de aquí, ¿eh? I know! Y menos tú.
And in Beautiful, he gave us a descent into hell full of filth and a heartbreaking humanity that earned him his third Oscar nomination. But if there is one role that has been seared into cinema history, it is that of Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. In this masterpiece by the Coen brothers, Bardem does not create a villain, he creates a metaphysical monster. His performance is an exercise in absolute restraint. Chigurh is a killing machine who feels no remorse, but also no pleasure. Bardem uses silence in a terrifying way. Every time he appears on screen, the rhythm of the movie changes. His control over his breathing, that hollow stare, and his cadence when speaking transform a ridiculous haircut into the very image of inevitable death. There isn't a single gram of overacting. Everything is weight, gravity, and a surgical coldness that earned him the first Oscar for a Spanish actor. Max von Sydow was not an actor, he was a cathedral. His baritone voice and that gaze that seemed to have seen the beginning and the end of the world made him the definitive collaborator of Ingmar Bergman. He represents the intellectual and spiritual authority of European cinema. He possessed an unreachable dignity, capable of endowing deep humanity to characters who, in the hands of others, would have been simple caricatures or marble statues. In The Exorcist, he gave us a figure of unshakable faith that projected a millennial old age, despite being only 44 years old.
I cast you out! Unclean spirit!
Shove it up your ass.
In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ!
And in Pell the Conqueror, he broke our hearts as an elderly, poor, and defeated father.
Som från Tomelilla, jag
Lad mig se dine papirer.
But it is in the seventh seal where von Sydow becomes eternal.
Tomheten, herre. Det kan inte vara så. Se på hennes ögon.
In this existentialist masterpiece, von Sydow plays a man returning from the Crusades only to find himself facing the Black Death, and face to face, death itself. His chess duel with the Grim Reaper is one of the most powerful images in the history of the seventh art. What von Sydow does here is pure acting magic. He manages to personify existential doubt, the fear of the void, and the desperate search for God without a single trace of exaggeration. His face is a landscape of hopelessness and curiosity. Every word he utters has the weight of a final testament. While in Hollywood, heroes fought villains, von Sydow fought against the silence of God and the inevitability of the end. It is a performance that transcends cinema to become pure philosophy. To see Max von Sydow in this film is to understand why European cinema plays in an intellectual and spiritual league that Hollywood, no matter how hard it tries, rarely manages to touch. Bruno Ganz was, and remains, the heart of European cinema. An actor with the sensitivity of an angelic poet. His face, marked by a melancholic expressiveness, became the canvas where directors like Wenders drew the loneliness of contemporary man. But the detail that proves his legendary status is that Bruno Ganz was the bearer of the Iffland ring, a piece of jewelry inherited for centuries that can only be possessed by the most significant and worthy German-speaking actor of the time. Ganz wore that ring until the day he died. We saw him touch divinity in Wings of Desire, where he played an angel who renounces eternity for love. In The American Friend, he showed a physical and moral fragility that consolidated him as the fetish actor of the new German cinema. But that same sensitivity that allowed him to be an angel was also what served him to play the German dictator, Adolf Hitler.
Jeder hat mich belogen, sogar die SS. Die gesamte Generalität ist nichts weiter als ein Haufen niederträchtiger, treuloser Feigen!
In Downfall, Ganz performs an acting miracle. He manages to humanize the monster without justifying him, showing the mental and physical collapse of a historical figure in his final hours. His preparation was obsessive. He studied secret recordings to replicate the voice and the tics, but what truly shudders is his body language. We see a man disintegrating from within, with that constant tremor in his hand that betrays his total defeat. He managed to make the viewer feel the claustrophobia and the madness of the final days of the Third Reich from the inside. It is a performance so powerful and precise that it has erased any other version of the dictator in cinema. Gary Oldman is the man of 1,000 faces. He possesses an almost supernatural ability to disappear inside his characters, altering not only his voice and his face, but his very vital energy. He is an actor of controlled excesses, capable of moving from the most manic explosiveness to a deathly silence in a matter of seconds. His career is a catalogue of transformations that have redefined what it means to be a character actor in the modern era. In Léon, the Professional, he gave us an iconic and deranged villain who devoured every frame with electric intensity.
Why don't you leave him alone?
He said, go back inside.
In Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, he demonstrated the opposite. A masterful restraint, winning the game using only his eyes and the silences of a weary spy. But his most legendary interpretation is in Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
It is no laughing matter.
Oldman doesn't just play the vampire, he grants him a tragic humanity and a terrifying aura. His performance travels through the centuries, showing us a warrior who renounces God for love and becomes a bloodthirsty monster. What makes this performance superior is the intensity that Oldman injects into every phrase. His voice, deep and heavy with centuries of loneliness, convinces us that we are before a being from another world. From the decrepit old man who receives Jonathan Harker to the seductive prince in London, Oldman hypnotizes the viewer with gestures that are theatrical yet deeply organic. He managed to make a character seen 1,000 times feel new, dangerous, and moving all at once. Anthony Hopkins is the master of absolute control. His Welsh technique is surgical. He knows exactly when to blink, when to breathe, and how much silence to leave between words to manipulate the viewer's nerves. He possesses an intense gaze that seems to look right through the screen. He is an actor of astonishing economy of resources. While others need to shout to impose themselves, for Hopkins it is enough to stay still, to own every frame. He destroyed our souls in The Father, portraying dementia with a terrifying vulnerability.
I feel as if I'm I feel as if I'm losing all my leave.
Your leaves?
And in The Remains of the Day, he gave us a masterclass in emotional repression. But in The Silence of the Lambs, 16 minutes were enough for him to make history.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
It is the ultimate acting miracle. With barely any minutes on screen, he created the most legendary villain in cinema and won an Oscar. What Hopkins does here is pure hypnosis. Lecter is an aristocrat of cannibalism, a man of superior culture and intelligence who devours you with words before his teeth. His performance is based on stillness. That upright posture, the total absence of blinking, and that soft, metallic, and rhythmic voice create an atmosphere of constant danger. Hopkins doesn't need special effects to be scary. His presence is enough. It is a performance that plays with space and time, a masterclass in how a European actor can use elegance and intellect to transform Hollywood cinema into an immortal work of art. Laurence Olivier represents the end of an era. While new actors sought naturalism, Olivier remained the last great monarch of classical theatre brought to the screen. He did not seek to be the character. He sought the technical perfection of the deception, an actor who believed that acting was the art of pretending 100% using makeup, voice, and costume as weapons for a total and absolute transformation. We saw him in Sleuth, devouring a young Michael Caine with an aristocratic and envious energy.
I tell you what, I think the scene the police find is simply this. After the fight...
And in Hitchcock's Rebecca, where his mere presence gave the film that atmosphere of mystery and coldness that only a knight of the British Empire could project. But where he took his theatrical acting to its highest point is, of course, in Hamlet.
To be or not to be.
Bringing Shakespeare to the screen without it looking like a recorded play is a feat that only Olivier could achieve. In his Hamlet, he is both director and protagonist, creating a gothic and psychological atmosphere that feels modern even today. His performance is pure artifice elevated to the category of genius. Every declamation, every stare into the void, and every movement of the cape are choreographed with millimetric precision. It is the final testament of an era where the actor was an athlete of the word. Olivier does not try to make you believe he is Hamlet. He tries to make you marvel at how a man can interpret Hamlet with such control over his nerves and muscles. It is a technical, external, and majestic performance that makes anyone trying to imitate his technique without having his discipline look ridiculous. To see Olivier is to see the end of a lineage, the last great actor who, through absolute artifice, managed to capture the essence of human tragedy. Alain Delon was the handsomest, most dangerous, and most ego-driven man on the planet. His public image was that of an arrogant chulo with underworld connections, a magnet of icy magnetism who didn't need to act because his mere presence was already cinema. But what makes him a top 3 of history is that, being that man, he was capable of murdering his own ego to deliver absolute purity and sanctity. In Le Samouraï, Alain plays a hitman, but he is not the classic tough guy. He is a man with an unshakable code and a sensitivity that has forced him to renounce his emotions.
Que voulez-vous? Vous tuez.
And in Visconti's The Leopard, he embodied ambition and a changing era, with an aristocratic beauty that blinded the camera itself. But if there is a legendary role where Alain was able to play the polar opposite of who he really was, it is in Rocco and His Brothers. Rocco is one of the most inexplicable miracles of cinema. The toughest and coldest man in film played a saint, a man who cries for his brothers,
No!
who has a pure gaze without ego, who doesn't care about his beauty. Rocco is a man of a goodness that hurts, a sensitive, tender, and innocent guy who sacrifices himself and allows himself to be humiliated for the well-being of his family. What Delon does here is amazing, because that face of a suffering angel doesn't feel false for a second. He manages to transmit a vulnerability that breaks your soul. There are scenes where he cries, where he begs, where he shows an almost childlike fragility that clashes head-on with the man we know he is off-screen. It is the definitive triumph of the actor over the persona. Delon emptied himself of his swagger so that only the sacrifice remained. He made us believe that the most desired man in the world was capable of forgiving the unforgivable out of pure brotherly love. It is a performance of a spirituality that Hollywood will never understand, because there, stars protect their image. In this film, however, Delon destroyed it to achieve immortality. Marcello Mastroianni is the soul of European cinema and the antimatter of Hollywood. While the Americans looked for invincible, square-jawed heroes, Marcello fled from that image and gave us the common man with all his doubts, ridicules, and weaknesses. He possessed a natural charisma that didn't require great effort, a disheveled elegance, and a gaze that always seemed to be asking for forgiveness for existing. In A Special Day, he took a radical turn from his image to play a homosexual man persecuted by fascism, in a performance of such technical delicacy that it leaves you breathless. And in La Dolce Vita, he became the eternal face of the void of hedonism and the search for meaning.
Che muori dalla voglia di fare l'amore con me, perché non trovi nessuno che venga sotto le tue lenzuola.
But his definitive performance, where he embodied the complete psyche of a genius, is 8.5. Here, Mastroianni plays Guido, a film director in the middle of a creative crisis, lost in a labyrinth of memories, lies, and fantasies. What Marcello does is a masterclass in how to act out void and confusion. There are no grand dramas, no shouting. There is a tired look behind sunglasses, a gesture of bewilderment, and a melancholic elegance that only he could sustain without appearing pretentious. Mastroianni manages to make the viewer empathize with a man who doesn't know what to do with his life. It is a performance of absolute transparency. It doesn't seem like he is acting. It seems like he is existing before us, letting himself be carried away by the chaos of his own mind. He captures the essence of human confusion with a subtlety that Hollywood has never been able to replicate, because there, everything has to be epic and resolved with an explosion or a speech, while Marcello proved that the most epic thing that exists is the simple act of trying to find oneself in the middle of nowhere. That is why he is in this spot, because he was the man who taught us that being vulnerable is the highest form of charisma. Daniel Day-Lewis is the absolute god of acting, not just of Europe, of the entire world. I have spoken dozens of times about this actor. His method is absolutely obsessive, pathological. He has never acted. He would live for months before filming until he became the character. He disappears from public life for years, only to return and stop being himself. In My Left Foot, he gave us the most amazing physical performance in history, remaining in character even off camera. And in Gangs of New York, he created Bill the Butcher, a villain of Shakespearean ferocity who devours every scene of the movie alive. But in There Will Be Blood, the actor delivered the pinnacle of cinematic acting.
I am the third revelation. I am the third revelation.
Day-Lewis here is a dissection of a human soul rotted by greed. From his cavernous voice to his way of walking, everything about Plainview exudes a misanthropic hatred and blind ambition. It is a performance of volcanic strength. There are moments, like the forced baptism or the final confrontation in the bowling alley, where Day-Lewis reaches an intensity that seems inhuman. He managed to create a character that is simultaneously a terrifying monster and a deeply pathetic man. He spent months living as the character, created a voice from scratch, and isolated himself totally with no outside contact. I have spoken in detail about this performance in my most popular video. I invite you to take a look. I assure you it will exceed your expectations. This is European cinema. A lesson in soul, in risk, and in an intensity that Hollywood, in its bubble of visual effects, has completely forgotten. If this journey through acting excellence has reminded you why you love the seventh art, give it a like and subscribe. And I will see you very soon in the video for the best actresses.